If you decide to haunt any comic shops this week, here's a list of new comics coming out that might take care of that itch for horror. Let's see what new comic book horror is out September 21st, 2022. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Let's check out this week in comic book horror, September 21st, 2022. Cradle of Filth, Maledictus, ATHENAEUM, number 3 is from Opus Comics. The story is by Blake Northcott and Kurt Amacker, with art by Abigail Larson. This series continues to adapt songs by hard rock band Cradle of Filth into terrifying comic book tales. This one is a story about the blood-bathing Elizabeth Bathory, so expect quite a nasty ring around that tub come cleaning day, metalheads. My only complaint is that this comic's title is done in that undecipherable metal font that you used to find on every high school metal kid's notebooks in the 80s and 90s. Elvira in Horrorland, number 4, is from Dynamite Entertainment. The story is by David Avallone, with art by Silvia Califano. As Elvira continues to skip through your favorite horror movies of yesteryear in the multiverse of movies, she ends up in Springwood taking on a fedora-wearing burnt man with knives for fingers. You know who I'm talking about. Watch Elvira let loose in the nightmare realm. Sounds like a hell of a good time. Titties. Van Helsing, Flesh of My Blood, number 1, is from Zenescope Entertainment. The story is by Pat Shand, with art by... well, it isn't listed. I guess no one is drawing this issue. Anyway, in this 32-page story, the female descendant of Van Helsing teams up with Dr. Julie Jekyll to take on a horrifying monster, most likely named Miss Hyde. But I'm just guessing there. One thing's for sure, the covers of this book will be featuring all kinds of ass and titties. They sure aren't hiding too much of those Jekylls, if you know what I'm saying. Lady Hell number 2 is from Dynamite Entertainment. The story is by Erik Burnham, with art by Zhengis Tasbolatov. In order for the she-demon named Purgatory to take over Hell, she had to usurp Lady Hell from her throne. This series follows Lady Hell's long and bloody road to redemption, with a little bit of ass, titties, titties, ass, and titties along the way. I still love Lady Hell's hooded design. It's very, very cool. NITA's Nightmare Blog number 8 is from Image Comics. The story is by Rodney Barnes, with art by Szymon Kudranski. Anyone reading this one? Is it as good as the title it spun off from, Philadelphia? I love me some Szymon Kudranski, who was last seen as the artist on A Town Called Terror. In this issue, NITA tries to solve an ancient cold case, but might not survive it. But I'll bet she does, since she's the title character at all. Just saying. Vampirella Strikes, number 5, is from Dynamite Entertainment. The story is by Tom Sniegoski, with art by Jonathan Lau. This book delves into the untold history of Vampirella's homeworld, an alien planet full of intergalactic vampires who wear tight-fitting, dental floss-like, butthole-scraping thongs. There's also a lot of titties, ass in there, too, I'm pretty sure. Chilling Adventures presents Weirder Mysteries. Number 1 is from Archie Comics. The story is by Frank Thierry, Joanne Sterer, and Ron Robbins, with art by Juan Bobillo, Ryan Jampol, and Federico Sabatini. Hey, this book takes a bunch of horror short stories from various talented individuals and groups them together in one one-shot anthology. Imagine that concept. Look for dark sci-fi and twisted fantasy, all set in the confines of the small fictional town called Riverdale, where a ginger teenager has 2 of the most beautiful girls in town fighting over him. Now that's what I call fiction. I can say that because I'm a ginger. Draculina, number 6, is from Dynamite Entertainment. The story is by Christopher Priest, with art by Michael Santamaria. Like most superheroes these days, Draculina seems to be mixed up in a multiverse of troubles. But when her mother gets to choose whether her version of Draculina is a vampire or human, how is that going to affect Draculina herself? Gotta admit, these alternate reality stories really make my brain itch. But you know what doesn't make my brain itch? That cover with those
ass and titties
on it. That makes a whole other region itch. Ew. The Walking Dead Deluxe number 47 is from Image Comics. The story is by Robert Kirkman, with art by Charlie Adlard. That tank the governor has been rolling around in finally gets to rev its engine and stages a full-on attack on Rick and the gang holed up in the prison, now presented in full bloody color. DC vs. Vampires All-Out War number 3 is from DC Comics. The story is by Matt Rosenberg, Emma Vassielli, and Alex Pacnadel, with art by Pascal Gualano and Haining. This issue seems to have all kinds of drama going on, with the Suicide Squad taking on the big bad vampire corporation known as the Blood Farm, while Batwoman tries to do the same thing for her own reasons, and we also find out just how Nightwing became a vampire. Lots going on in this book, and I love that chaotic and carnage-filled cover. Speaking of carnage, Carnage number 6 is from Marvel Comics. The story is by Ram V, with art by Roque Antonio. I've been catching up with Carnage lately. Seems the psychotic symbiote has been collecting the powers of supervillains. How has he been doing this? By murderizing them, of course. Now Carnage has upped his game and set his sights on the Asgardian elf king Malekith, who was the main baddie in the dud Thor the Dark World. Ram V is taking Carnage to godlike status in this twisted little horror superhero comic. Gunslinger Spawn number 12 is from Image Comics. The story is by Todd McFarlane, with art by Brett Booth. So I think I finally get the difference between these Spawn books. You see, King Spawn is the one who wears a crown, and Gunslinger Spawn is the one who slings guns. Glad I could clear that up for you. That's what I'm here for. This one's written by McFarlane himself and drawn by Brett Booth, so it's about as pure a Spawn story as you're going to get. Blink number 3 is from Oni Press. The story is by Chris Sabella, with art by Hayden Sherman. This is a modern retelling of the struggles between the Morlocks and the Eloi, as a woman who escaped a cult dividing the two groups finds herself drawn back into their mind-shredding world. I had a blast with the first 2 issues of this series, and I'm looking forward to falling further down the rabbit hole in this 3rd issue. Ice Cream Man number 32 is from Image Comics. The story is by W. Maxwell Prince, with art by Martin Morazzo. This issue follows the story of a man trying to stay off the alcohol, but with this being an Ice Cream Man comic, expect the most twisted trip to sobriety you can and can't imagine. I love every issue of Ice Cream Man, and I doubt this issue will be any exception. Nice Escher-esque cover as well. Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to Be Kin, number 5, is from Dark Horse Comics. The story and art are by Jeff Darrow. The Shaolin Cowboy continues his violent path of chaos and destruction across the landscape of nightmares and daydreams birthed only from the twisted mind of Jeff Darrow. This series only comes along every once in a while, so consider yourself lucky that you're able to pick this series up now. Stuff of Nightmares number 1 is from Boom Studios. The story is by R.L.Stine, with art by A.L. Kaplan. It's another horror anthology book. These seem to be all the rage these days, which is a good thing for us horror lovers, I guess. This one features tales of classic monsters as seen through horror-eister R.L.Stine's eyes. The popular writer reshapes the classic Frankenstein mythos in this premiere issue. Finally, there's Creepshow number 1 from Image Comics. The story is by Paul Dini, Steve Langford, and Chris Burnham, with art by John McCree and Chris Burnham. So Creepshow was a movie anthology inspired by those old horror anthology comic books that were so popular back in the day. Now the property has come full circle, as it is now an anthology horror comic book once again. I'm confused. But I'm sure the story about cannibalistic birthday clowns and a twisted Halloween story by some amazing comic creators will help me sort the whole thing out. That's it for this week's haul. I'll be picking up a bunch of these titles, including anthology horrors Stuff of Nightmares, Creepshow, and Ice Cream Man, maybe Lady Hell, definitely Blink, and I can't miss Shaolin Cowboy. How about you? Let me know which ones look good to you down in the comments.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside